This is Sarah Rintamaki with Connecting for Kids, and tonight we are presenting a great program called Staying Sane with Little Ones at Home. As we just found out, here in Ohio, we are going to be staying home with those little ones for at least another 6 weeks, so this is definitely a much needed program. I'm so pleased that tonight we have two experts, early intervention professionals who will be answering questions both that were sent in ahead of time as well as questions here tonight. First, I want to make sure that we're thanking our sponsor, which is Westlake Porter Public Library. We're so grateful that our public libraries are still working to educate the families in our communities even in these times when their physical locations are closed. So thank you, Westlake Porter Public Library. I'd like to begin with having our early intervention professionals introduce themselves. Paula, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Paula Papp, and I've had the pleasure of working with young children and their families for over 40 years. During that time, I've been an early intervention specialist working with in a toddler program, a special education preschool. For something like 17 years, I team taught an inclusive kindergarten. My master's degree is in reading instruction, but I was able to focus more on early literacy learning. So that's one of my big interests. So I think one of the advantages in my experience, and also I can speak for Neysa too, is that in working for Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities, we did a lot of home visits. And so that gave us the opportunity to learn more about children in their homes with their families.
Thank you, Paula. Neysa?
Hi, everybody. I'm Neysa McKenney. I am a speech language pathologist. And for most of my 38 years in practice, I've been working again with young children and their families. Like Paula said, I also worked for the Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities and did a lot of home visitation and was able to facilitate helping parents get through some tough times with their kids and structure the environment to help them with their routines and any kinds of problems that they encountered. Currently, I'm really proud to be working for Connecting for Kids. I've been with this agency for 3 years. Seems like just yesterday I signed on, but I'm so glad to be here. And I work with Paula, and we put together the Teach Me to Play program. And I also get to participate. I'm one of the staff persons that works in the child care area when there's the speaker series and the coffee and chat programs are going on.
Thank you, Neysa.
Sure.
Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole Bourne-Crow. I'm one of the family resource specialists with Connecting for Kids. So I will be helping to moderate this evening's talk and also learn for myself how to stay sane, since I think we're all struggling right now. So if at any point during the program you have a comment or a question that you'd like to ask our experts, feel free to go ahead and comment, and someone will be relaying the questions over to Paula and Neysa. If you don't feel comfortable putting your comment on Facebook, you can also text me and I will relay your questions. So you can text me at 440-570-5908.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nicole. And I also wanted to point out before we go into the questions that this program is designed for children ages 18 months to 6 years of age. So we know that many of you have questions about how to deal with elementary or pre-teenage children, but this is not going to be the program to be able to address those questions. We invite you to send those questions in to us at Connecting for Kids. We do have some programs scheduled for next week where we'll be addressing those. But for now, please keep your questions and your comments to the expertise of our professionals, so those little ones. Okay, so the first question that was sent in, I think, is a really common one we're hearing. So many children who are preschoolers with developmental delays, whether that's an autism spectrum disorder or Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or maybe even just speech delays, are struggling with social skills. And so many of them have goals in their IEPs to work on those social skills, and yet it's a really hard time to work on those skills when the kids are at home and can't play with other children. What thoughts do you have for parents during this time?
I don't know, Neysa, do you want to start, or do you want me to start, or?
You can go ahead, start.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I can think of is how, what specific social skills do you want to be working on? And then what are ways that you can build practice for those social skills throughout your daily routines and activities? Another idea is to do role play. Is your child able to participate in pretend play scenarios, either with you or even with little characters? I know with my grandchild, Lily, we act out all kinds of little things with her little Paw Patrol characters. So is there a way that you can practice some of those social skills through pretend play? Neysa, you want?
I think it's important too to define which social skills you're going to work on and define them with the child. You can practice sharing. And when you're practicing sharing, you can set up the activity within all of the daily routines, or pick and choose a few of the daily routines, and define sharing, define what it is, demonstrate sharing, call it sharing, and practice that as much as possible throughout the day. Turn taking is another social skill. Greeting is a social skill. Negotiating a turn, managing conflict, all of those things can be practiced throughout the day.
Waiting.
Waiting. Yes. And so I think, as you're teaching it to your child, it's important to define it, give it a word, and practice it frequently. And you're the best model for your child. They're going to learn from you, and they're going to learn from the other children in the home. So you have a great opportunity here to practice that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I remember one of my therapists told me, you can be your child's friend too. So you can get down on the floor and play with them. And maybe sometime you don't play nicely and you don't give them a turn, and then see how they respond. I don't know if that is something you think that parents might be able to do, sort of that whole negotiating and playing.
Right. And that the idea is sometimes it's creating a problem in some way, and then your child has to do something in order to negotiate or work through that problem.
So if you're hoarding all of the toys, Sarah, when you're playing with your child, they have to figure out a way to ask for some of those toys, or they have to say to you, that's no fair. You have all the toys. You're not sharing. And then they can learn to use those social skills words.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So another question that we had was a parent who said that their child is having a hard time with the lack of structure for the day. She tries to schedule the activities around the teacher's instructions, but it's difficult to get him motivated. He gets frustrated really easy, and then it's the reality of, other children running around, distractions, dogs barking. How do you keep a young child like that focused and with attention when they're not buying into the process?
I think that most of the families across America and probably across the world right now are experiencing some very similar issues. I feel that having some structure is probably the most important thing to keeping your sanity. So every day should be somewhat similar. You get up at the same time, you follow the same morning routine. You mix up free time with learning time. Just like they would in the classroom, you do a sit-down activity, and then you get up and move and wiggle. And then you come back and do a sit-down activity, and then you go outside for recess. So your home day should look kind of similar to that, in that you have certain times for certain things, and that information is provided to the child either, by you saying, this is what's happening in our day, or presenting a picture schedule.
Right.
And a picture schedule is really supportive of your words. Sometimes kids hear your words, but they don't remember your words. But the picture schedule there is permanent, and kids can look back on that picture schedule. You can use that as a reminder to see what we talked about. Once we finish breakfast, now we're going to go outside and play. Then we're going to come back in and do some of our schoolwork.
I think what's really
That's one way.
interesting too about having a visual schedule is that kids, first off, kids in any kind of preschool setting are very used to having a visual schedule or a picture schedule or some sort of symbolic schedule. And you can simply go on Google Images and, you know, print out some different images or, you know, line drawings or whatever to depict certain activities or parts of the day. But it's interesting that kids don't argue with schedules. In other words, sometimes as a parent, you can just say, look, it's on the schedule.
That's right.
And it's amazing that a lot of kids will just go, oh, it's like, how can you argue with the schedule?
Yeah.
And so I think that's invaluable. If you have a child who maybe isn't developmentally ready to understand that a picture or a line drawing, you can use objects. In other words, you know, first we're going to do this, and it's a spoon that signifies we're having breakfast. And then we're going to do this, and maybe it's, you know, crayons or something that signifies, you know, we're going to sit at this table, you know, or something, so that, you know, you can just use objects. It doesn't necessarily have to be pictures, depending on how your child is processing visual information.
Right. I also think that once you get the schedule figured out and you have your child is moving through the schedule, there's going to be difficulties within each routine. And you have to look at your child and figure out, how can I support him? So for example, in Teach Me to Play, when we go to circle time, if a child is wiggling and can't sit still, we offer them some supported seating, whether that be a wiggle cushion or a chair with a back and sides, or some fidget toys. Or the expectation changes a little bit. We lower our expectation and don't expect the child to sit the entire time, but maybe they check in with us. So maybe they come in to do a few minutes worth of the activity that's on the schedule, and then they have to leave, and then they come back to do some more of it. So I think, you know, we don't have to finish the whole activity. You can divide the activity into smaller segments. You can support your child with supported seating, fidget tools, breaks, music, headphones. There's a variety of different techniques you can use to help your child through each individual activity throughout the day.
I also wanted to mention that Chris Chambers just recently did a, what would you call it, podcast or whatever, for Connecting for Kids. And it's on our website. Maybe Sarah, you can speak to that. But it was about, you know, 10 tips to help keep your child focused.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. No, it had some great ones. And while it was geared towards elementary age, I think there are some great tips in there for preschoolers. Namely the obstacle course as an organizing method. She would set up obstacle courses, but have it be very intentional, so that you had to do it 3 times, for example, and that was a simple way to get some energy out and yet still allow the child to focus and then come sit down and do some pencil and paper work.
Right. And just even, she talks about like even structuring the areas, you know, like here's the area where we sit and we do these kinds of things, and having that area, you know, cleaned out as best you can and organized, and having the materials handy, you know, so that, you know, again, if you're jumping up to go and run and get stuff, but guess what? Your kid's going to be jumping up, you know, so I think she had some ideas that will easily transfer to this age group.
Autism Speaks also has a lot of nice resources for this particular concern. They have an article called Tips for Managing Children During This COVID, and it speaks to the homeschooling and all of the dilemmas that parents are facing, being both the parent and the educator and the referee and all of the other jobs that parents have right now. And one of the suggestions, a couple of suggestions that I thought were interesting were just what Paula said, and what Chris has talked about was setting up centers like a classroom. So you define the space for the activity. They also talked about creating and posting the rules. So here are the rules for this particular activity. And posting those rules, whether that be via a picture schedule or again, just knowing the rules, knowing what you're supposed to do there. And they talked about setting up the daily schedule. And she talked about also having, they talked about having a breakfast meeting. So at breakfast, you're going to talk to your children about what's going on today. Kids who have more information about their day are going to be calmer than kids who do not have the information about what's happening next. So keep that in mind as you go.
And that's a very common mantra or practice in early childhood is the plan, do, and review. At the beginning of the day, you make, you talk about, what's your plan for the day, and then you do your day. And at the end of the day, reviewing, okay, well, what worked, what didn't work? You can possibly talk to your child about that. And as educators, we're taught to be, decision makers, and that, you have to sometimes decide in the moment, okay, this isn't working. We need to do this differently. And sometimes you have to reflect back and say, okay, well, we need to change this schedule in some way. What worked, what didn't work.
And having those, like you said earlier too, Paula, having the center or the space where you're doing your work or your activity organized so that if you have to change gears in the middle of that activity, you're prepared to do so. You can have another activity under the table. You can switch it up somehow, just to maintain the child's interest and keep the activity going for a little bit longer if necessary.
Good. All right. Well, thank you. Another question that we had was, what are some safe activities for the kids to do while I need to be tending to other things like work?
And we know this little guy. We've known a couple of these kids, but one of the things I thought of is for this specific child was to take, Neysa always talks about your bag of tricks kind of thing, but to take what you already have and this child likes to roll around and explore his environment and stuff. So I thought of taking a laundry basket and turning it upside down and just started to attach different kinds of things to it, different toys and things that you already have. So that way he's experienced them, more upright rather than just on a flat surface. And, then he can explore around. And you can even take things like, I was in my kitchen and I thought, oh, look, all these plastic spoons have little holes through them that could attach to something and bang together.
Bless you.
Did you do this?
Oh, no, I did not.
Oh, ooh, I'm telling.
Good thing we're all virtual.
I know, really. That's what kindergartners, you learn how to go, ooh. That's what they always used to do. I'm telling. Anyway, I don't know, what was I talking about? Oh, just having, thinking about using the things that you have in a different way. And then the other idea I had was, I know that when I have my granddaughter, sometimes I'm like all day long, I'm like, gosh, sometimes we have an extended tubby time. And I just look around the house for some different things to toss into the tub. And I add warm water a couple times, just, different sponges and different scrubby things and different pouring things and funnels, and I mean, it was amazing all the different silly things I found like in my kitchen and in my pantry that I could toss into the tub and keep them busy for 45 minutes. And then I just sit on the toilet seat and watch.
Or if you're a parent who needs to do some work, you can do your work right there.
Yeah, you can sit on the toilet seat with your laptop. I don't know. Sounds kind of crazy.
I remember when my kids were, we called it the bewitching hour at our house. And that was from 5 to 7. And that was the time after dinner and where everybody was a little bit fed up with the whole day. And my kids did really well in the tub. So that's a good place to find some calmness.
Yeah, because it can be calming.
Right. And then put in some novelty with the toys. But back to the you know, the phone rings and a parent has to take a call, or you have to get on and do a Zoom meeting or whatever. I always had a box of goodies handy, novel goodies that the kids did not get to play with unless the phone rang or we didn't have Zoom back. But when I needed to step out for a moment, I would bring the box down, and it had different things in it that they were able to play with that they never got to see before. And so it could be things that light up, like flashlights, or things that you have to shake to light up. It could be musical toys. It could be, obviously it doesn't have to, it's not supposed to be anything that needs supervision because you need to step away. Fidget toys, books that
Right.
make noise, any
And
number
the
of
thing,
things.
and the thing about young kids is that you can have toys around and then you take them away and hide them somewhere for 2.5 weeks and pull them back out again. It's like Christmas.
Yes,
okay?
it's novel.
For
Mhm.
a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. So even if you're not bringing some new things into your house, think about taking a few things like Neysa was describing and hiding them away for a week or two, and then bringing them back out as your new novel thing.
Mhm.
Sarah, are you there?
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, Nicole, do you have a question you wanted to
Well,
ask?
yeah, we have an educator question, but I think it could apply to pretty much most parents and their sensory seeking children.
Mhm.
So an educator has a question about sensory kiddos and 3 to 5-year-olds. What kinds of, I guess, any resources or the things that you just mentioned really fit, but any other resources you can think of for those sensory seekers who maybe don't have equipment at home, they don't have all the stuff that they're used to having in their sensory rooms at school.
Right. I think anytime you're at a loss with a child that has any kind of sensory issues, I always think heavy work is maybe your
Right.
go-to friend.
I was just going to dip down and look for my list.
So
Do that.
heavy work, you know, and I'm sure this educator is familiar with that. Heavy work is any activity that compresses your joints and gets you moving. So it could be stretching, bending, pulling, pushing, tugging, jumping, crawling, carrying heavy things. So you're going to, you know, like I always say to families, for example, if you're unloading the grocery bags, then you're going to give your child that jug of detergent and have them schlep it down the hall to the basement stairs. Or you're going to have them take that big bulky box of Cheerios out of the bag and try and reach it and put it up onto the counter. So all of that stretching and bending and squatting, all of that is joint compression. And what that does is that sends information to the brain and then releases our happy chemicals in our brain. It makes us more alert, more in control of our emotions, and more ready to do what the task is. So whenever you're at a loss, find some heavy work activities, and you can just Google heavy work activities and there'll be thousands of ideas.
Neysa and I have written a list of heavy work for toddlers and preschoolers, and
funny you should ask.
Yeah, funny. But you know, Neysa was describing whole body heavy work, and when we think of heavy work, we frequently think of it in 3 ways: whole body heavy work, hand heavy work, and then mouth heavy work. And all of these things can be centering and calming. So just to stay on the heavy work ones, I thought I'd think of some other ones. Okay, for instance, you get a pillowcase and just get all of your stuffed animals and stuff those stuffed animals in there. And then, you know, then pull them back out and stuff them in again. Just even things like playing row, row, row your boat. That pushing and pulling with the child can help. Making your child a sandwich in between 2 couch cushions. So in other words, you put a couch cushion down, the kid's there, and then you put the couch cushion on the other couch cushion on top. And you know, you can even pat on top and stuff. All those kinds of, all that deep pressure and that weight, again, is feeding into your child's proprioceptive system. doing bear crawls, wheelbarrow walking, kicking things, kicking those stuffed animals across the room and back. So those are just some ideas. Hand heavy work would be more like playing with Play-Doh and squeezing Play-Doh and taking maybe some socks and stuff and pulling and stretching them, and even playing tug of war with them with another person, or tug of war with yourself. Let's see, sponges, playing in the sink with a lot of different kinds of sponges, or little washcloths that you're wringing them out, okay? And then mouth heavy work, eating something very crunchy, chewing on something very chewy like licorice, sucking something thick through a straw, for instance, taking apple juice and adding some applesauce in it, so it's very thick, so the child really has to suck very hard to suck up through there. Again, all those things are heavy work and can help center and calm your child.
I also think that there's when your child is beyond being centered, because there's too much going on and they can't get back into the green zone when you look at the zones of regulation. There's a website called Stop, Breathe, Think. It's actually an app, but it's also a website. And there's a lot of deep breathing activities on there. And there's soft music playing. And so that kind of activity helps your child regulate, along with blowing bubbles. Bubbles are very comforting and very soothing if the child is blowing them, because the blowing aspect helps the child relax.
Yeah,
So
and it's kind
blowing.
of a mouth heavy work. Right?
Mm-hmm. It's also mouth heavy work.
And
right?
they can use a straw to like blow little pieces of paper across the table, or blow into water that you've added some dish soap into to blow, to make bubbles that way. Just as I was saying, chewing and sucking and crunching are mouth heavy work, so would blowing be. And
I also think, when the weather allows, it's a little iffy right now, but to get outside and do some physical activity, crawl up that slide, pull your brother in a wagon, kick that big ball outside, whatever you can do to get outside and jump and push and pull and ride, all of that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So another question that we had that came in was about regression. So, and this came in a bunch of different ways. It was everything from my child was potty trained and now they're not, or they're doing a behavior that they didn't used to do that we thought was gone and now it's back. Or they used to be able to do something and now they're refusing, whether it's getting themselves dressed or, regression. So how do you help parents with that?
I think that kids continue to make progress given the supports that they have in place. We all know that some of the supports, it's kind of like the rug being pulled out from underneath us. Some of the supports are not as intense as they were before. And so it's expected that kids are going to regress in some of their behaviors, some of their skills, some of their language. And again, I think it's really important let's figure out what the stressors are and see if we can address the stressors that may cause a child to act out, may cause a child to not want to use his words anymore and use his behavior instead, may cause a child to not want to go to sleep during the regular bedtime routine, and see if we can minimize those stressors. You have to look through the day, and you, as a parent, you need to remain very calm, even though that's very challenging right now. Step away if you need to, and try and make your home a very calm, reassuring, safe place for kids to participate throughout the day, and without and anyone getting too upset or too overboard with online learning and all of the things that need to happen during the day.
I guess what I'd like to say is that to look at these regressions as just a little bump in the road.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if a child had that skill, unless something has really, really, really gone awry, it's probably just a bump in the road, and they will be gaining those skills back.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably just the way they are reacting to all these changes in their lives. And as Neysa said, finding what those stressors are and what kinds of things that we can provide for them to help support them and give them comfort is critical, I think. But I guess, you know, in all these years of doing this, and maybe Neysa, you can chime in, yes, kids have some regression, but rarely do kids not then recoup, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And parents are aware of what's on their child's IEP, what kinds of skills they're learning in school, because parents are in charge of homework and practice for therapy and all of those things. I would just continue on with some of that practice as time allows. I wouldn't get too carried away with it, but to keep your child familiar with some of the skills that he was being presented in school or in therapy. And when it does come time for him to really, recoup those skills in a structured environment like school or therapy again, he'll be ready, and all of those words and all of those movements will be familiar to him.
Yeah,
Sure.
this is really good. It reminds me a little bit of we had a coffee and chat last week, and one of the things the therapist there said is to remember that this is a season.
Mm.
That this is just one of many seasons we've encountered, and it will pass, and then we will all look back on it. So,
Yeah. I mean, and children with special needs, you know, the road, it's a bumpy road, you know, and just to know that, you know, we always, you know, you get over one bump and you'll have some smooth times, and then some bumps are higher, some bumps are lower, but to know that, you know, you get through it and you keep moving on. So
Yeah.
it's a bump.
And I think the most important thing is to remember that, you know, yes, you will recoup the skills, and yes, you will get over the bumps. But what's most important at the end of the day, and at the end of this quarantine and COVID and all of this stuff that we're dealing with right now, is that you and your family stay emotionally stable.
Oh, that's good.
That your children know that they're safe and loved, and whatever else happens beyond that is a bonus. So if today you didn't get your online schooling done and you didn't get your OT reps in, so be it.
Pass.
There's tomorrow.
Yeah, you got to pass.
Yeah, you got to pass. You only can do what you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
no, I think this is really good. I'd like you guys to speak to that, because what I hear a lot from parents when I talk to them is a lot of fear. You know,
Mhm.
everybody says early intervention is so important to be able to help kids gain skills in this critical time. And many of them have this fear that they're missing out on the window of opportunity to best help their children. And I think that, so speak to that fear, because there isn't much more they can do. You know, the children don't always respond well to teletherapy.
Right.
And it's not always realistic that a parent can be that therapist and teacher and, you know, employee and manage the other household. And so, you know, but focus on, you know, that love and support is what they can give them. Right.
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 And it's like that emotional well-being is so critical for everyone. I was working with a family where there were 4 little boys, a 5-year-old and triplets, 3 triplets. And I would look at the mom, and, you know, things would be getting kind of crazy. and she'd say, I gotta go get a cup of coffee. And she'd go get a cup of coffee and she'd come back and, we're trying to, get things settled back in and stuff. And she would literally sit there and caress and stroke and stuff her cup of coffee while she took sips. In other words, that was her way of calming herself, centering herself. So, finding those ways that you can take care of yourself and what supports can you provide yourself to calm and center yourself through all this. Mm-hmm. And I think really the biggest thing in my mind is to find ways to and I know we've already said this, integrate those things your child needs to be working on within your daily routines and activities. For example, something like, are you working on counting, for example? So can you count, how many times you brushed, your front teeth, or how many times you rubbed your hands together under the water, or whatever.
How many spoons go on the table for your family when you're setting the table. Yeah.
Right. That one-to-one correspondence, so again, it's just trying to think of ways that you can build those skills into your daily routines.
Mm-hmm. And I think the same holds true for any kind of speech and language skill, right, or OT or PT skill, in addition to the academic skills, is right, to look at your daily routines. And, if your child is working on core strength, can he climb into his own high chair? Can he climb into the car seat? Can he pull the covers over himself at night, because that requires some core movement? There's a lot of things that you can do within your daily routines that would address your therapy goals and your speech and language goals. If you're working on putting a 2-word phrase together, then when you're dressing, you say, my shirt, my pants, my shoes, my socks. Or when you're eating, you say, more cookies, more juice. So there's places within the routine that you can think about which words you want to present, which phrases, whatever the sentence structure is you're working on, what targeted words, what targeted sounds you're working on, and embed those throughout the daily routines.
Good. Thank you. So Nicole, do we have time for another question?
We do. We don't actually have it. I don't know if any other parents have questions that they want to send in, but right now it's kind of quiet out there.
Well, we had on our list that someone was asking about having difficulty. They were feeling that their child had some sensory processing issues, but when they went to their pediatrician asking for a referral so that they could investigate that further, the pediatrician pretty much refused. And so then where do you go from there? So I don't know if Nicole, you want to speak to that a little bit. Is that something you've heard a lot, or?
No, well, every pediatrician is probably different.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll handle that one for you, Nicole.
I'm sorry, Nicole.
Yeah, no, that, so obviously, different pediatricians. So we always tell parents that they can always ask for a second opinion from a different pediatrician. That we know that the Cleveland Clinic and university hospitals and Mercy all have occupational therapists that work on sensory. It's a very much part of those hospitals' practices. So sometimes a different opinion might lead into a different answer. And then another thing that they could do is maybe go directly to the OT. You don't always need a pediatrician's referral to go to an occupational therapist. So that's another option for them as well, to get a consult and learn about it.
I just think it's really important too, and I've said this to parents a lot, is if you go online or on our website and you begin to read about sensory processing disorder, there are a lot of children with autism who also have sensory processing disorders. But there are many, many children who have sensory processing challenges who do not have autism.
Right.
So if you go on and you begin to read some information on the internet or on whatever, don't get freaked out, thinking, oh my gosh, this means my child has autism. They may or may not, but the point is that not all children who have sensory processing disorder are on the autism spectrum. So that's a really important thing to know. But then too, on the autism websites like Autism Speaks, there's really a lot of great information about writing social stories. And that was something that we could even talk, maybe Neysa could talk just a little bit about that as we wrap up. Even though you have a child who is feeling very anxious right now or is regressing, there might be a way to look at a social story that's already been written, or writing your own social story. And that's something that's typically used with children with autism. But again, that can be a very effective approach to supporting your child in a lot of different ways.
Right. And the Connecting for Kids website has wonderful links to how to write a social story and the benefits of a social story. But a social story is simply a small selection of pictures that addresses a concern. It can be going to a birthday party and how that can cause some stress for your child. So it answers the questions of who's going to be there, what happens at a birthday party, the most importantly, how you might feel, and what we will do to help you get through it. So it's illustrations and simple wording that talks about a dilemma and is read ahead of time to help the child understand what's going to happen and how they can alleviate any kind of anxiety they might have while they're at the birthday party. You can write a social story about anything, going to the dentist, riding in the car on vacation, being homeschooled, or doing online learning, hitting your brother, how that makes your brother feel, how that makes you feel, what the solution could be to that. Anything can become a social story. And it's just another way to explain a situation and have some illustrations to help the child understand the problem and the solution to it.
No, that's great. And we'll make sure that we post some links to that, because I think social stories are a wonderful way to be able to explain in a different way to children, all kinds of things. Nicole, I think there's another question.
Yes, we have one parent question that we kind of answered. So I wanted to kind of change it a little bit. So Kim had asked about, she's having some trouble juggling homeschooling the older kids and then also balancing some attention-seeking behaviors from a 2.5-year-old. So she was asking for some ideas about independent activities to do for the 2.5-year-old while she's homeschooling. See, there's a kid in the back. Great.
There you go.
How to balance those different behaviors with some activities, but I feel like maybe a great, since we've already talked about that, a better way of thinking about that is how do you balance the attention amongst all of these different children and all the different children and all their different needs. I think that is something that a lot of people are struggling with.
I think first and foremost, you have to understand each task that you're asking any of your children to do, and understanding whether or not this is something that they can be doing independently with some minimal guidance or support, or more extensive guidance and support, and then being able to build your day around that. So in other words, is there a way, if you know when your 10-year-old is doing this task, they can do it pretty independently, then you know during that time your 7-year-old, maybe you're going to set up one of the activities that they do, but they need more of your support. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
understanding, you know, how much support or how much of your attention does your child need during the activities or the tasks that they have been assigned.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to that, while the 10-year-old is independently working and mom is supporting the 7-year-old in their work, the 2.5-year-old could be sitting at the table with the 7-year-old, and maybe that's the time that you bring out the crayons, or you bring out that Play-Doh, or you bring out something that the child can do that you know will hold his interest and he needs to do under supervision.
Yeah. And I'm not an expert, I'm just a mom, as you can see by my
child. That makes you an expert, though.
Yeah, really.
But when I did counseling with my middle child, who just popped in here, we put a lot of emphasis on naming specific time that was just for my child. That way they felt bathed in attention. So even if it's 5 minutes at the beginning of the day that you label this is mommy and you time. And that way attention-seeking behavior isn't as great when they're maybe getting a little bit neglected later on in the day. So we've been trying that.
And I think reinforcing those times when they're being independent but not needy. Yeah. So, you know, if, for example, oh, you dressed yourself all by yourself this morning. Look at that. You put your shoes on and your shirt on and your pants on all by yourself. Yeah. That's amazing. Good for you. High fives or whatever your praise is for your child. But catching them being independent and not whining for your attention during that routine.
Yeah, that positive praise.
Yeah.
And I think too, again, you can offer some structure to that in that, you know, and some rules about that. In other words, when I'm over here with this child, then, you know, your questions have to wait, you know. Again, with a 2.5-year-old, they're not so great at waiting. And so it's, again, going back to some of those ideas that we were talking about before, is having a box of novel kinds of things to do to keep that child, the 2.5-year-old, engaged while you're busy with the other kids.
And it is a juggling act for sure.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of forgiveness, you know, so know that, you know, I think that the parents need to understand that the 2.5-year-old is not going to independently play all day while you help work on geometry. It's just not going to happen. And so maybe some of the geometry doesn't get done.
Right. Because at the end of the day, what's most important, that everyone feels safe, secure, and loved. And that, you know, you may have not gotten through the geometry, but everyone is feeling good about their relationships with everyone else in the family today.
Right. Sometimes you just have to give yourself and your family a pass. You know, I mean, it just is what it is. The other thing I wanted to bring up, there was one more question, Sarah, about that had been written in about a 6-year-old who had started wetting the bed at night. I don't know if we want to talk about that.
Yeah, that was part of the regression, you know, when they were wetting the bed. Did you want to speak specifically about regression with potty training?
Well, yeah, that was pretty much the question. So, you know, again, Neysa and I had talked a little bit about this. I think the first thing that is to do is to contact your pediatrician, because sometimes there are medical or physical reasons why a child starts wetting his bed. Stress can bring on a regression in potty training or bowel and bladder habits and independence. So again, you know, we're in stressful times. Things are just very different. So finding ways, and we've talked about that before, to relieve your stress and your child's stress. You know, having, you know, limiting fluids, you know, once they have dinner and drinks and stuff, limiting fluids for the rest of the evening, which this mom had said she'd been doing. But another idea is to when you go to bed, say your child goes to bed at 8:30 or whatever time, you know, before you go to bed, like at 10:30, get the child up to go to the bathroom, to use the bathroom. And then that might help the bedwetting. But the most important thing is that it's not something that your child can help in most cases. Many children who bedwet have family members who have bedwet. It seems to be a genetic sort of thing. And a lot of times it has to do with just sleep patterns. If you go into a very, very deep sleep and then don't awaken enough to go, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. So again, it's really important to be very accepting and nonchalant and not embarrassing or punishing in any way. And for your child to understand that you understand that it's not something that they can help. But the good news is most kids grow out of bedwetting.
Right. One of the other things I read, Paula hit on all of the bullet points with that mostly. One thing that I thought would be helpful for the family, though, would be to have a change of bedding and a change of jammies and underwear handy, so that in the middle of the night when this occurs, you don't have to be fumbling around. You can immediately help the child change into some dry jammies, change their bedding, and get back to sleep.
And I think this is a really good idea, because then it's not a big ta-da.
Right.
You know, you're not making a big deal about it. It's just
Right.
sort of a nonchalant,
Right.
okay, oh, this happened. Okay, we'll clean this up and, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Well, good. Thank you. Thank you for circling back to that point so that we went over it a little bit more.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Paula and Neysa. I'm so grateful that you would share your thoughts with us and help parents during this tough time. Nicole, thank you for telling us what's going on Facebook. We're sad that Teach Me to Play doesn't look like it's going to be happening in May either. But we encourage families to keep sending their questions in to Connecting for Kids, and we'll do our best to keep helping you to stay sane with those little ones at home. And finally, I just want to thank Westlake Porter Public Library. Once again, we're so grateful that the libraries are still continuing to educate their families. Even in these times when we can't come into the library, it's wonderful that we can virtually meet and still learn.
And Neysa and I, you know, we're on the website. If you want to shoot us an email about any kind of question or comment or any kind of ideas that you might have to share with us. I mean, you know, you go to all these classes and workshops and you work with other professionals, but really I've learned more from families than I've learned from anyone. And so if you have any ideas to share or have any questions, Neysa and I are happy to communicate with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Wonderful. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.